All right. It is Wednesday. Excuse me. It is Tuesday. It's a little after 7 o'clock, and we are in for a treat this evening. This will be the first of a series of what I'm going to call Pioneers Roundtable. And it is my honor, it is my privilege to have several gentlemen who started with Vanderbilt in the late 60s through the 70s. Several accomplished athletes, all have amazing stories in and of themselves, and I'm going to introduce them in no particular order, but I'm going to, the screen that I'm looking at, I'm going to go left and then right, etc. I've got Marshall Cheatham, who played 78 to 80. Marshall, thank you for joining us this evening. It's good to see you.
Glad to be here.
Yes, sir. We've got Doug Nettles. Doug played 71 to 73. And Doug, correct me if I'm wrong. You were the first African-American football player drafted from Vanderbilt.
Correct. Yep.
Very good. We've got Wamon Buggs. Wamon has been on the show. Doug's been on the show before. Wamon played in late 70, 78 to 81 and led just about the entire world in pass receptions during his time when he was there. Wamon, can you hear us, bud? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Good to see you here, everybody. Thank you.
Yes, sir. We've got Taylor Stokes. Taylor was the first African-American athletic scholarship football player at Vanderbilt and came in the fall of '69. Taylor, thank you for joining us.
Good to be here. Thank you, Bernard.
Yes, sir. And we've had Rod Gurley. I don't know if he's still with us on or not, but we hope that he'll come back and join us. And I think Mr. Walter Overton is somewhere there. I don't see him in our screen right now, but hopefully he'll join back in. Maybe if one of you gentlemen want to prompt him on your phone. But the purpose of what I wanted to do is a series of discussions to share experiences, to talk about common themes, to just share anything about your Vanderbilt experiences, your time beforehand growing up, the times that you were on campus, and how it impacted your life after, and even up to today. And I'm doing a series of these because I want to make this platform available to as many of the pioneers who want to come on and share their stories, to chop it up with other teammates and others who have similar or maybe even differing experiences. And I'm just gonna, I don't have a particular order or a series of questions, but Marshall, I'm going to start with you since you're on my left right now. And coming out of Chicago, I know that it was not, I guess, ideal or designed initially for you to make your way south in coming out of high school. But how did you get out of the Chicago area and make your way to Vanderbilt?
Very interesting story. I was working for Parks and Recs in the city of Chicago, and one of the park director knew Coach Axe. So when I signed up to work over there for the summer program as a counselor, Coach Axe must have made the superintendent must have made a call to Coach Axe because they had played ball together at Tennessee State. So that's how far that went back. So somehow or another, I ended up meeting Coach Axe, and he invited me down to Vandy. I was all state at the time in Illinois, had never thought about going down south. My parents told me never to go down south, to be honest with you. But I visited the campus, and my tour guide was Rod Gurley, okay? So I get down here, and Rod Gurley tells me not to come. And when he was telling me not to come, I'm sitting there now, I'm 17, trying to figure out why this dude from Chicago was telling me not to come down south. He was being honest with me. But, the thing, you're 17, so you like, this dude must not want me to come down here because I'm going to take his spot. So all these crazy different things going through your head. But what he was trying to explain to me by not explaining it to me was, it's not easy. It's not Chicago. It's, it's different. Well, I didn't find that out until we got down there for 3 days, and it was eye-opening. But he kind of explained it to me after we had our reunion a couple of years ago, because there was a lot of animosity about what happened back in the past. And Rod told me, he said, don't look at it as the school did something to you. look at it as it was the times. It was a sign of the times. So it wasn't that Vanderbilt did anything. It was just the way the times were at the time. So, but other than the eye-opening experience as far as being called boy and things like that, never going back to Mississippi, because I heard some things in Mississippi as a young man that I will never go through Mississippi again. But I'm beyond that now. But just 40 years, 50 years later, and I still haven't been to Mississippi. Okay, and I'm just gonna be honest with you, because I've never experienced that venom. I've been to Arkansas, I heard all that nastiness. I've been to Alabama and heard all that nastiness. But Mississippi had a different kind of nastiness. And I'll just leave it at that. I just pray for them. That's all you can do.
Well, thank you for sharing that. But Marshall, coming out of Illinois, and I'm assuming most of the teammates when you got there, white or black, most of the guys were probably from the South. I'm sure they were scattered other parts. And I know you didn't play with some of these fellas, Doug being from Panama City, Taylor from Tennessee. They were a little ahead of you. But did you lean on whether they were white or black, whatever teammates, from a standpoint of getting used to life in the South, into Nashville?
That's how I survived, was the teammates. The teammates, wow. I met some folks down there that I'm still friends with, and some that I wish that I could stay in touch with, because I had never met folks that were that genuine, that honest. I'm gonna be honest, Ken Hammond, Valley Head, that dude got us through college. He got us through college. I'm gonna be honest with you, without him, I probably would have went home 2 years earlier. Okay. But yeah, it wasn't the players, it was just the times. It was the times. The Klan marched right past Carmichael Towers, and we were told that we couldn't say anything or do anything or we lose our scholarship. And that was a kind of tough pill to swallow, because I lived upstairs and I'm sitting there watching them with the state troopers escorting them past my window. I'm like, damn, so. But that's the backside of it. That's a sliver of what the rest of it was good. I'm telling you, all the people that I met there are kings and queens. I'm gonna be honest with you. They're kings and queens, and they're raising kings and queens now. So I'm just honored to be there and to know these gentlemen and the ladies that I met while I was there.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Marshall. And I've got things I'm going to come back to you, but I want to go to Doug Nettles. Doug, coming out of Panama City, growing up the Panhandle is kind of the deep South still, that area of Florida. But I know that you were also in Georgia and moved around a little bit. Doug, you were a few years before Marshall. You were in the beginning of the decade. Did you have a similar sense of feeling when you got to campus that Marshall just expressed?
Yeah, sort of. Growing up in the South, I guess, Marshall coming from Chicago had a different understanding. My understanding was it was a realization from childhood as to what to expect. So, I grew up in the South during the 50s, during segregation. So I understood exactly what I was going to. And so it was a constant day-to-day fight, for your integrity and against the racism. And so I understood that. But I think that I got through it because of Walter. Walter was from Nashville. So whenever things got ugly, we left campus, and Walter knew where to go. Unfortunately, sometimes it wasn't a good thing. We got into a lot of trouble, but we got away from that trouble to trouble we could handle. So it was a different thing. And then once we found our way to Fisk and Tennessee State, then we were cool. But mentioning Mississippi, it takes me back to our first game in Mississippi. Taylor, Walter, remember that one? where we walked into the Holiday Inn, and I remember Walter had forgotten something, and he went to the to get a toothbrush or something. I can't remember. Walter can enlighten you. But when he came back, he said, "What's going on?" And I said, "I'll tell you when we get to the room." And when I walked up to the counter to get our keys, the guy looked at me and he says, "Who are you with?" And you remember those days, Taylor, we had the gold blazers and everything on, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The guy says, "Well, who are you with?" And I said, I looked down, I said, "What do you mean?" And Coach Cope, remember Coach Cope, was standing next to
Yeah.
me and he said, "What do you mean, who's he with?" And he looked at Cope and he said, now Cope was from California, he went to the University of Pacific. And he said, "Well, we never had any Negroes to stay here." And Cope thought he said the other word and got ready to go over the table at him. And I kind of held him back as a whole coach. And by that time, Pace walked up and Pace says, "What's going on?" He said, "He just called Doug a nigger." And he said, "No, I didn't. No, I didn't." And by that time, so Pace reached down and grabbed a little envelope, took it out of his hand, gave it to me. By that time, Walter walked up. He said, "What's going on?" That's when we went to the room. And so walking up to the Holiday Inn, it's like that little garden Holiday Inn. Remember that, Walter, with the pool in the middle? And so we went and got into our room. And so Walt looks at me, he says, "Call Janet's father." And the girl I was dating at the time, they were from Holly Springs, Mississippi, about 60 miles north of Oxford. So I called him and asked him to come pick us up because we were going to leave. And he said, "No, you knew what you were getting into. And that's just the end of it. So, we're going to go." So we got coming out of the room for meetings. And we came out of the room and there was a Mississippi State Trooper. Remember that, Walter? Was standing outside of our door and he started following us down to the meeting room. And so Walter turns and asks the trooper, he says, "Are you following us?" He said, "Yes." And he introduced himself, polite individual. And we got down to the room and Pace and all the coaches are standing in the front of the door. We walk up to him and say, "Why is he following us? What's going on?" He said, "Well, we have some death threats. And so we just want to make sure everything is okay." I remember Walter looked at me and said, "Death threats on who?" I remember turning to Walter and said, "Who do you think? Who's he following?" so the next day, we come out of the locker room, and the locker room was right next to the wall.
Oh man.
And they were throwing. Remember that, Walter? And Walter was standing next to me. I said, "What do you?" And he, like, the receivers and offense go out, and we defense go out by ourselves. And so Walter was standing next to me. I said, "What are you doing next to me?" He said, "I don't know. Coach told me to come up next to you." And we came out of the locker room, and they were throwing all kind of stuff, cans, bottles, and everything over the side of the rails at us and everything else like that. So we went out and played the game, got beat. I mean, obviously back in those days, we weren't very good. But the thing that I remember, and I don't know if Walter remembers this, is that we were leaving after the game. They cleared the entire stadium out. Okay, put a tarp over the front part of the
Bus.
where the buses were supposed to be, and we walked on the other side, and they had some like decoy buses. We got out, and I'll never forget. And this is what stopped us, because Walter was leaving. We were both leaving. Okay. Walter was really unhappy about not being quarterback. So it didn't take much to get him to say, "Let's go anyway." So he was going to Western Kentucky and I was going to Florida State. We were coming out of the locker room. That's where we were out of there. And there was this old gentleman. They had an artificial turf field. There was this old black gentleman who was cleaning the field. And he rolled up next to us and he said, "Young man." And he kept saying, "Young man." And I didn't know if he was talking to me or what. And I turned and looked at him. He says, "Thank you," and kept going. And we were on the bus, and Walter and I were sitting there talking. And I was like, "I don't know what that old man meant." I remember Walter looks and says, "Well, I think that what he meant was, this is bigger than both of us. So let's give it one more think before we leave." So we went home, had a couple of jugs of Ripple, and thought about it and decided we were going to stay. But there was a lot of things like that happened to us. Like Walter and I remember, in Tuscaloosa, where the guy pulled a shotgun on us from a truck. Remember that one? And Walter and I took out over a cemetery to try to get away from the guy, that kind of thing. So, and actually hiding behind a tombstone till the guy went around the other side of the corner and he lost us and we went back to the room.
Was this the cemetery that's right behind the stadium?
Oh, yeah, it's not far from it. Yeah.
There's one that's like literally across the street.
Yep. And there was, so the guy, when we came, we actually missed lunch or something. And we went down, and the guy, we went out, and it's like somebody standing in front. We asked him, where could we get something to eat? He said, well, you go down this street, cross those railroad tracks, and there's Dairy Queen. When he said across the railroad tracks, I knew where he was sending us. Okay. So we went down there. Dairy Queen, hey, back in 1971, Dairy Queen was pretty good. So we went down and got something to eat and came back. But there was things like that happened. But the thing that I think that and Taylor can speak to this as well because he was there before us. As Marshall said, it wasn't our teammates; it was the coaches.
Yep.
You have to understand these guys had never ever coached any of
black
us.
players. Yes,
they had never done it before.
Exactly.
And so they didn't. It was like Pace. I don't think Pace ever had a conversation with a black person. I know he's passed, and I won't say anything bad about him. But to talk to him was like looking at a wall. He looked through you. He didn't see you as a person. After all these years, I think I can understand that. And now this is what a lot of people don't understand. There's one person that needs to have some accolades about all of us being there, and that was Smitto. Coach Smitto is the one that recruited me, Walter. Did he coach UTD? He recruited UTD?
No, Shelton. Yeah, but Coach Smitto was
Smitto was the one.
dude.
David, all of us. And I think that he was the one and Coach Patterson. But Smitto and Patterson was the ones were two of the coaches that Patterson. I think could communicate with us to where we were able to understand what was going on. But but outside of that, I mean, they couldn't have a conversation with us. Once we left practice, we didn't know who they were.
Right.
Period.
Thank you, Doug, for sharing those incredible stories. Walter Overton from Pearl High School. I know that you had conversations, I've read it several times, about you becoming a quarterback at Vanderbilt. And you would have been before Conrad Holloway over at Tennessee. If I'm not mistaken, you might have been a year or two ahead of him. Can you share a little bit about those conversations and what transpired where you ended up not playing quarterback at Vanderbilt?
Well, I lived approximately 1.5 miles from Vanderbilt's campus. All my childhood life, I could see the lights in the Vandy Stadium and hear the roar of the crowd. And you wonder whether or not, I would wonder whether or not could I play there? Could I play there? Because there were no blacks playing there, but I do it. Could I do it? And through my high school years, I was all state, all this and all that. And the Smitto came to me and said, "Hey, Walter, would you like to take a walk around the campus and let me show you around?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "I would." He said, "Well," he said, "you know what?" He said, "There's never been a black quarterback in the SEC, and you could be the first." I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Well, I tell you what, I've always dreamt to be able to play at Vanderbilt because I would listen to the radio announcer that was so prolific. I mean, he was just really understanding and making sure that you knew, even if you weren't at the game, you felt like you were there because you were listening to the radio. All of those things came about that, and I knew that that was the dream of mine to play for Vanderbilt University. So that was, and you know, I had a chance to be with Joe Gilliam, and he was 2 years ahead of me, and Joey wanted to bring me back with him. I said, no, I don't do that. no, I want to go to Vanderbilt. And he said, oh, okay, they're not going to treat you right. I said, I hope not. I said, well, the coaches are saying that they will give me a chance to play quarterback, and I said, okay. And so I talked with my mother and my brother and my sister, and they said, hey, come on, let's go for the ride. And it all came about where I met Doug, and we became close friends from Panama City. So it was just the two of us.
Walter, was Joe across town? Was he at Tennessee State?
Who, Joey?
At wasn't he playing? Was he playing quarterback in college at the time?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was the senior year of our freshman year.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what I was going to ask. Was there a tug for you about following his footsteps, or maybe going to a HBCU instead of going to Vanderbilt, or was Vanderbilt really the goal?
Yes. Joey wanted me to come because Joey was a senior in high school at Pearl High School, and I was a sophomore.
And I thought he was a couple years ahead of you. I just wasn't sure the distance in time.
Yeah, that's right. So, and he said, hey, Walter, said, come on, back me up. You might get hurt, whatever. I said, Joe, I said, I think I'm gonna go to Vanderbilt. I think that's been my life dream. So, Smitto, got me and got Doug, and we got together and became good brothers.
Well, in fall of '71, I guess you guys were you had to play freshman ball that year. Was that still the rule, or could you play on the varsity?
70 was our freshman year.
70 was the freshman year.
So was Watson the quarterback, or who had become the quarterback by that time?
I was the quarterback for the freshman team. I think we played 5 games, and we win 3 and lose 2. Judge.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. We beat Tennessee, Kentucky, and somebody else. I can't think who it was.
And Louisville, I think we played Louisville.
Yeah.
And so it was 3 and 2, and so and I was getting publicity about the fact that I'll be the first black quarterback in the Southeastern Conference.
Technically, you were. If you count the freshman.
Yeah,
I was, but
you were. You were the first black quarterback to take a snap.
Yeah.
Okay, put it that way.
In the South. Yeah.
Yes.
And so spring workouts came, and so Coach Space called me in and asked me, said, hey, Walt, said, would you want to play receiver so you could have time to play? I said, no, Coach, I don't want to be a receiver. I want to be a quarterback. I said, if I have to be behind Watson, that's fine. But let's go. He said, well, let's try you out with being a wideout. I said, Coach, I really, really don't want to do that. He said, come on, let's see how we can work this out and make it happen. So I never made that happen. I did it because I said, well, I'm gonna get a great education and maybe I can do some different things. Maybe I can be a quarterback after watching it again. It's gone. So I stayed. My mama told me that you will stay there. Go to Vanderbilt. Get you to do whatever you got to do. Just go and take care of your business.
Well,
okay.
It certainly speaks volume to your character for staying, because you clearly could have transferred to any school really that you wanted to play quarterback. Maybe not in the South per se, but you could have gone elsewhere with your talents. But as Doug said, and I don't mean to skip around, but going back to that post Ole Miss game with the gentleman cleaning the stadium, and he said, "Thank you to two of y'all." Was that, I guess, yet another turning point in your journey that kept you at Vanderbilt and kept you thinking about the bigger picture, not just you, but I guess in society and where you fit in and how you would accomplish your goals, even though you had hurdles
Right.
that others may not have had. I
Right.
don't know if that makes sense, but it just, when Doug brought that story up, it just seems like it was such a pivotal moment for maybe both of you guys to stay. And you realized, I guess, the importance of why you were there. Am I overstating that, or is that a fair representation?
That's very fair. Very fair.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah, I think we both realized that, you know, I remember our conversation of that night about what we should do. And it, you know, we realized, I think what we forgot, that there was going to be these things that were going to happen. You know, like I was telling Marshall earlier, I mean, you know, I'm from the South. I was from the South. I grew up in the segregated times. And so I understood. And it was that there always you know, the racist attitude is always going to present challenges, you know, to you. And what we were trying to do was to break those barriers. You know, TD broke it for us, and then we were trying to help break it for people like Marshall. And so, you know, if we had all left, then what would that have accomplished? That would have played right into what they wanted. You know, I remember having a conversation with Clarence Davis years ago, who was a running back for the Raiders, and he was at USC at the time. And I remember him telling me the story about how Bear Bryant called John McKay and asked him to play them. And John McKay and McKay immediately said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, okay, well, I'm not coming to Tuscaloosa." And so he says, "No," he said, I'm having a problem here. And he said, people need to see something. Okay. Now, what Bear was actually trying to do is basically saying, I want all of these people to see these African Americans kick the hell out of us, so they understand exactly what we need to compete nationally.
Right.
And I remember him telling us that that McKay put all these things. It had nothing to do with football. It had all to do with civil rights on their bulletin board. And I remember they were talking about, they wanted that they had reached and said that we're going to play this game in Atlanta. Okay. At least a city that we can get in and have some, you know. And they went in, and a guy who gave me headaches years later, Sam Cunningham, ran 150, 60 yards on them and just devastated Alabama. Well, the next year, you got Wilbur Jackson, you got John Hamm, you got all the rest of these guys coming in there. And now look what Alabama has.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wilbur Jackson is from my part of the state of Alabama. And I know that he was a trailblazer after Cunningham and Davis just decimated Alabama. And I think the game was in Birmingham at Legion Field.
It was in Birmingham. Yeah.
There's several books written about it. Some of it's lore, some of it's true. But what you said, Doug, I've heard that story from other sources. But Taylor, you were the trailblazer. You were the first scholarship African American football player at Vanderbilt, and not for what you did, guys like Walter and Doug may not have come or might not have stayed. And I know you and I've had this conversation on the show before, but at that time, you're 18, 19 years old, maybe even 17 at the time. Did you appreciate what you were doing at the time you were doing it? Or is that something that later in life kind of developed in your thought process?
Well, you know, Bernard, to be honest with you, like Doug, I grew up in the South. In fact, I grew up in Central Virginia. So I was introduced to racism and racist actions at an early age. You know, I went to segregated schools. You know, all of that. So I understood that. You know, I understood what the cultural barrier was. And to a degree, I did understand that being a pioneer at that time was something that was part of the tenor of the time that we lived in. When you look at the civil rights movement and the strides that African Americans or Black Americans were making inside of our society, integrating their schools was just the next step at the collegiate level. But so I had an awareness. Now at 18 years old, I wasn't maybe as attuned as I am now about it, but I certainly understood it. I remember something my father told me because I really didn't want to go to Vanderbilt. I wanted to go, like Walter was talking a minute ago, I wanted to go to Western Kentucky. That's where I had scholarship offers there, and I could have gone to to West Point. It could have gone probably to Purdue, but my dad wanted me to go to Vanderbilt, and he wanted me to go there for the particular reason that you just mentioned, because he knew that if Black Americans were ever going to make significant inroads in our society, we were going to have to, tear down barriers at places that no one else had ever been. And so, reluctantly, I agreed to come to Vanderbilt, but Vanderbilt was not my first choice. And then at 18 years old, on my high school team, we had, just like Walter and Doug, I'm certain as well, we had a winning culture. I mean, I came from a winning program, one of the top programs in the state. And when I got to Vanderbilt, the losing thing just blew my mind. I mean, because they get that thing mixed up. It's not really student athlete, it's athlete student. Even at Vanderbilt, that's the way it works. Okay. So I came to Vanderbilt to play ball. That was simply, I'm just going to put it straight up. That's what I wanted to do, and I felt like I'd get an opportunity to demonstrate what I could do and my abilities and my talents. And did I ever come in for a rude awakening? I think my teammates appreciated my talent level, right? What I was able to do on the field. But the coaches, that's where my problem was. I had a difficult time with the coaches. They just didn't understand me. I'd make plays, and I remember incidents, and where I'd make plays and they were like, yell at me for not maybe running this depth or catching the ball with one hand or something like that. I'm like, hey man, I just made a play. What's the deal? I mean, that's what we're doing here, right? Aren't we making plays? So there was a lot of other subliminal and not so much subliminal. A lot of times just simply overt directive animosity towards
Taylor,
me.
talk about the pace telling you to shave.
Yeah,
was
that the same? Yeah, was that the same time you were talking about?
Yes, that was in Mississippi.
Yeah, but I didn't know that happened to you. I mean, my brain is 73. I mean, I don't remember everything, right? So, but I didn't remember that thing with you and Walter, man. Yeah, so on the same trip that Doug was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Oh wow, yeah. Coach Pace came to me. I had a little afro, more hair than I've got now, and had a mustache and had a beard and all that, right? Because right, I was repping my my Black Power thing and all that, right? So, and I'd had it all year. So we're like maybe into the fourth. You were like in the third, fourth game of the season, something like that, I think. Yeah. And so we're down in Oxford at the pregame meal Saturday morning before we were boarding the bus to go to the stadium. And I'm sitting there, and Coach Pace comes up and he says, Stokes, I need to talk to you. Oh, okay. What do you need, Coach? Okay, I'm going to tell you once. Shave that stuff off your face completely, all of it. And if you don't, I'm leaving you down here. You're not going to get on the team bus, and you're going to have to find your way back to Nashville from Oxford, right? I'm like, okay. Hey, Coach, where's the razor? where's the shaving cream? Because hey, you think you're gonna leave me down here? No way. I mean, no way you're doing that. But yeah, he actually did the game day, game morning. He came and said, if you don't shave it, we're leaving you here.
Was,
So I
was
shaved.
there any type of hair policy on the team?
No, no. Like I said, we're deep into the season. I mean, I had all my no. To answer your question, no.
So Taylor,
No.
this was 71.
This is in 1971. Yeah.
All right, you guys opened the season by beating Chattanooga 20-19.
Yep.
You tied Louisville, believe it or not, 0-0 that game. Beat the hell out of Mississippi State 49-19.
Yep.
Virginia
That was a great
lost.
game.
Virginia lost, Bama lost, Georgia lost, and then the game you're talking about was in October of 71.
Yep.
Okay.
Lost 28-7.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was about the sixth game of the season or so.
Yep.
Oh, well, I've got another. Yeah, that Mississippi game. So okay, so you see, we're deep into the season, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I looked the same way for the Chattanooga game that I did for that ball game.
Yep.
And coach had never said anything else to me. And there's another kicker. That Mississippi thing was really a dark moment, I guess, because on the field there was an incident at Oxford, and I'm not going to call any names of any people or anything like that. But again, and this goes back to the coaching. So by that time, I wasn't playing wide receiver. I was place kicker. I was doing kickoffs, extra points, field goals, that type of stuff. So we scored our lone touchdown, right? And so I go running out on the field. I've got my tee. I'm ready to, set up and kick. And my holder looks up at me and asks me, "What am I doing out there with my my so-and-so, words I won't mention, self, right? Call me the N-word."
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, in the ball game, right before this, all this is while people are lining up to kick an extra point, mind you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm supposed to be out here kicking. Well, he called the other kid's name. So-and-so is supposed to be out here. Coach Bradshaw didn't tell. I said, no. Coach Bradshaw didn't tell me anything, And by this time, the ball snapped. He's holding it. I'm kicking it. And obviously it was good, right? So I do well under pressure, right? So you can see that. But at any rate, that actually happened. I go back to the sideline. I'm asking Coach Bradshaw, what in the world, what's going on here? And so I didn't even, I asked him that, then I grabbed the tee and I went out and just went out to kick, do the kickoff, and I'm like, from that point, I was like, what in the, so I kicked for the rest of the year, but I later found out that there was a push because the kid kicking in front of me, old man, a grandfather, somebody had offered to donate $1 million to the school if their grandson, would play, if they would start him in front of me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't mention no names.
No, I won't mention it.
We know who it was.
The record books will tell you who it was.
We know who it was.
Let me say.
Go ahead.
Hey, the time that I was a freshman leading up to a sophomore, Stokes and I was killing in spring practice. We was killing.
Yeah, we were.
Huh?
Yeah, we were. Yeah. Actually, remember Gary Chesley, Kurt got hurt that fall, was recovering from a knee injury, and you were taking David Strong's place, and I was out at X and running first where Kurt was. Yeah. And then we come back, and then in the spring game and all that, I was running number 1, blah, blah, blah. We come back this summer, and I look at the depth chart, and I'm on 3rd string. I'm like, what did I do between spring and summer, man? I mean, and that's where I am. So, I mean, but I know they were pushing Kurt for All-American, for All-SEC, and no doubt Kurt had talent. I mean, he was super talented. He was very talented.
That's good.
But he was good. But I mean, the guys. I mean, I could play. And so then after that, it was really emotionally for me, it was downhill. I mean, football was the last thing I really wanted to be bothered with, to be honest with you. And football is not a game you play if you're not motivated to do it. You're in the wrong place on that field if you're not into performing at your best level. And so from that on, I ended up actually leaving school in my junior year.
Taylor,
Yeah.
did you have any non-white coaches?
Where?
Were there any coaches at Vanderbilt who
No,
were
I never.
No,
any of
no, no.
I don't mean to make light.
No.
I'm
I
just
think the first
asking.
one came after I left.
Yeah.
Well,
There was
that was
somebody-
going to be my question.
Yeah.
Who do y'all know? Do you happen to know who was the first black
Walt,
coach?
you remember who that was?
Wayman might can answer that question.
Wait a minute. Let me. I'm trying to think.
We were
There
talking
was
about
somebody
it
they
yesterday.
had as a coach, but he started as like a recruiter first. I can't
Yeah.
remember who it was.
Was
But
that
no,
Act-
there were no coach,
No.
there was no African American coaches while we were there. Period.
No.
I've never,
Zero.
in my high school and college career, I was never coached by a black coach. In fact, pardon me.
I was going to say I don't think it was until the 1980s that
Right.
Vanderbilt had of any level black coaches on the football staff. I
Yeah,
know
that's
when
probably right.
I played 86 to 90, and
Mhm.
we had George Warhop was a line coach. Lynn, I can't think of his last name. We had 3 different African American coaches at different times, but I think a few years before that they probably did, but I just don't know who it was.
Yeah, no, there were no black. I had no black coaches at all. Period.
There was
None.
no African Americans on the staff. Period. Zero.
Let me. I haven't gotten to Wamon yet, and Wamon, I want to ask you, and I want to make sure that I tread lightly because I don't know how to properly ask this, but I'm just going to go ahead and ask it. You're a local fella, and you're coming to campus, and you could have gone to many other schools with your talents. When you were in high school, were there any white athletes that were on any of your teams? Did you compete against white athletes in high school?
Shit, hell yeah. Christian brothers, they used to try to break me in half every year, but we beat them. I did have one white Kevin, I can't think, he's an actor. If y'all ever watched the movie, what's the movie with but he ended up being an actor, but he played defensive end with us. We had one white male that played on our basketball team coming through Hamilton. And the if I can remember, guys, you got to remember, Bernard, Coach Axe was responsible for us coming. Now, there may have been another African American coach, if I'm not mistaken, before him, but I'd have to ask Gurley or somebody else. But to my knowledge, it was Coach Alexander, and of course David Cully ended up being my receiver coach.
Alexander, that's what it was.
So but I coming out of Memphis, I just never forget. Memphis State was not doing well then, and my high school was doing very well athletically, and we played Christian Brothers, and they moved that game from Crump Stadium to the Liberty Bowl. And I never forget, on one side of the stadium, all white, and on the other side of the stadium was all black. Doug, you remember Eric Harris, who went to my high school, played defensive back, Keith Simpson. All of our alumni were on the sideline. And it was like, you don't win this game, we got problems. And we end up sneaking a 13-12 victory. And we never looked back. Matter of fact, we should have been the state champions, but the year before we got put on probation, and we were the only undefeated, untied football team in my high school's history. So I can stand tall on that. But that's how it was. Yeah. But I think Coach Alexander, to my knowledge, was the first black coach that he was the reason why I came.
Well, I know that Coach Cully, David, was wide receivers coach at Vanderbilt, 79 to 81.
Yes, sir.
Maybe Coach Alexander might have been right before him. or
Yes,
right?
sir. He was.
There
Yeah.
in 78. Yep.
Yep.
Then he might have been, and I'll do some research to find out, but he might have been the first
Yeah.
coach.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Wamon. I want to ask you guys as a whole that, and it certainly don't have to name any names. We don't all get along with all of our teammates, regardless of our skin color, religion, or anything. There are our teammates. We don't pick them. We just get put on a team. So it doesn't mean you have to get along with all of them unless you're on the field. So here's my question, and I know this is a delicate question. Did you ever feel, I know, Taylor, you gave us a little bit of insight, at least the holder held the ball properly to be able to kick it. But did you ever have an instance in your mind where you felt that maybe a teammate deliberately did something that hurt the game or put you in a bad position in a game because of race, because of he just didn't like you?
I never felt that any of my teammates, if they did, they didn't let me know it, had that type of attitude.
And I want to make, I don't mean to interrupt you, Doug, but I don't want to imply that I have any knowledge of anything of that sort. I'm just asking in general.
No, I don't remember anything, Walter, you might, but I don't. I mean, some of my best friends. I remember Kenny Stone was our free safety, and Kenny was drafted by St. Louis or somebody.
St. Louis.
Yeah.
St. Louis. And Kenny and I were really, really close. He was from Palm Beach, Florida. And Kenny, one day we were in study hall, and I had the big afro. And I said, he looked at me, he said, Doug, he said, let me ask you a question. He said, now, don't get this wrong. He said, we're okay, right? I said, yeah. He said, can I touch your hair? And I looked at him, I said, what? He said, can I touch your hair? I said, can I borrow your car? He said, yeah. I said, go ahead. I mean, that's the type of relationship we had. And I remember when we were playing St. Louis one year, and all of a sudden, it was a special teams play, and I was running across the field, and all of a sudden, somebody tapped me on the shoulder and smacked me upside the head. I looked up, and it was Kenny. And the referee came over, thought we were fighting, and, he was just saying hello, that type of thing. So no, I think we all had that type of relationship that once you get on that field, I think it's that brotherly thing that, it's like going back to the Alabama USC game. I think that did more. I think Bear was a lot smarter than a lot of people gave him credit for, because I guess he understood that this sports can do more or just as much for race relations as anything else.
Right.
I mean, because let's face it, there's a couple of things in the South that, religion, church, and family, religion, family, and football. Okay. Not necessarily in any order.
Right.
Okay. And so, that people realize that that this is what it's going to be. And so that's what it was.
May I say something, man? I'm sitting here and I'm glad I'm last. But this is special, man. I mean, I'm hearing stuff. I can't complain about my situation was a little different. I got a different story from, and Bernard, I think I shared that when I was on. But man, Walter, you've been there for me from day one.
Yep.
Doug, you weren't there because you were a little older, but you knew who I was. I knew who you were. Man, the stuff y'all went through.
Yep.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
I don't mean to get emotional, man, but
yeah, I know.
I tell you what, Wayman, as talented as you are and were at that time, I'm not sure that you would have played. And I'll be very honest with you. And the reason I say that is
probably wouldn't have, but
no, I'm not saying that you weren't talented enough to play. Don't get me wrong. But if there were people that they wanted to promote, right? I mean, if there were people they wanted to promote, the politics were unreal back then, Wayman. It wasn't about winning. it was just about, it was almost like a social activity on Saturday afternoon and Saturday night to give those people something to do. The product they put on the field, I mean, they weren't worried about trying to win ball games.
Right.
If they were, we wouldn't have some of the stories to tell that we're telling.
Well,
You know,
I experienced a cheat. Probably remember when I got there as a freshman, coming from a successful program, wasn't used to losing. I
right.
came to win. I came to win. And
Yes.
and remember, if y'all know the connection, Walter, Doug, when Coach Pancos was at University of what was called Memphis State back then.
Right.
Yeah.
And they paid players handsomely because I know because I had two of them
Yeah.
that went to my high school and they went
Yeah.
first round, and that was the war of me being recruited. And I just didn't want to stay at home, man. I wanted to get away from Memphis, man.
Oh yeah.
So when I got to Vandy and I looked at the damn depth chart and I'm looking at this 6'5" brother and I'm like, how in the hell is he and I, Preston Brown, Charles Edwards, on the same? We're playing the Z position,
Right.
and I
Right.
look on the other side, and they got Bart White and Roger, this other attorney. He couldn't beat me running backwards,
Yeah, that's what I'm
and
talking. Okay.
they're
Yeah.
all on the other side. So, Taylor, to answer your question, I knew
Yes, sir.
then
Yeah.
what I was up against, and like
Yeah.
Walter and Doug, I was, Marcus Williams, one of that came in with Cheatham, and Marcus ended up leaving for a minute to go to Clemson. And I'm like, well, hell, where am I going to go? And I said, you know what? I'm going to stay here and make the best of it, because at that time you had to sit out 2 years. You couldn't go to another SEC school or whatever.
Right.
So I saw that, Taylor, but I put my head down and I just
Yeah.
said, I'm just going to whoop butt. And I had to wait my turn. Coach Cully produced Preston and I back to back, and we produced for the university. And I'm just emotional and elated because the university doesn't understand. You guys are. It needs to be a book and a movie, and y'all talking about some reparations. Shit, you need to get paid, man. So I'm just being honest, man. Y'all don't want to hear my story. Like I say, I could go deeper into how I came to Vanderbilt because I had committed to Tennessee, and my mom didn't like Johnny Majors because he was drinking, and I ended up Axe came back, and that's how Dennis and Coach Cully came to my home, and that was the end of that. Cheat might not have remembered, but we had exit interviews. I was recruited by UT Martin. At that time, a gentleman by the name of Coach McIntyre was the head coach.
Mhm.
Got the job at Vanderbilt, and you know how they have the meetings. And the first thing he said to me was, "I got you now." And I'm like, "What the hell does that mean?"
What does that mean?
So
Yeah.
when it came to draft time, I realized what it meant because we had exit interviews, and he said, "Wamon, you're a sharp dresser, and why don't you just let me go ahead and get you contacted with the business community and get you a job?" I said, "Get a job, coach? I'm leading the nation in receiving." And, so I'm like, this is kind of weird. And I found out later that the word was out that I couldn't run and I was slow, had a bad attitude. And I went from being in Howard Schlusser's home in Hollywood, waiting on being projected with Mike Quick, third round, to no draft. And y'all talking about a crackhead sitting by the phone, them phones we had over our heads on our bed. I sat in my bed for 3 days. And so I go from performing for the university that way to zero, and I end up going to Green Bay, making the team there. But that was my bitter sweet. But like I say, I'm in a 63 years old, and I just thank you guys, Doug, for setting the table for us. Walter, Taylor, Cheat, what we went through.
Yep.
So that's my story, guys. I started to write a book, but I said no, I have to move out of Nashville because there were a lot of things offered, money, cars to me to come to Vanderbilt, but I never got it. And I'm still searching, man. I can't find the damn. There was a construction owner of a construction company that promised my mom, told her that, and I'm glad I didn't get it because I didn't want to, be thinking at this stage in my life that I owe Vanderbilt anything. But I did what I had to do in the classroom, on the field, kept my nose clean. Walter was there for me, so that's my story. And I think we all have one, man. But damn, boy, I'm telling you, to hear what y'all just said, you wouldn't have made me believe. Walt, you ain't never shared that with me, man. I appreciate you guys enlightening me on making the right decision because I don't think I would have fared well going to Tennessee, and who knows, but we all came that way, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
Wayman, thank you for sharing that. I know that's not easy, and well, I don't know. I hear it in your voice. I hear the passion, but I want to throw this to all of you guys here on the panel. In 1988, I don't know what your relationship was with the school, if anything. I came in the fall of 86. In the fall of 88, our signing class was the largest signing class of African-American athletes for football in the history of the school up to that point. There were 11 men, 11 guys, and they're called the fellas. And I'm hoping that you have made contact with some of them over the years. Dr. Derek Gregg, Dr. Derek Payne, Carlos Thomas. I could go on and on and on. All of these men have found their paths from Vanderbilt, and they're successful all over the country. CEO of a hospital chain, Clarence Civilian. I could go on and on and on. But here's my question or my point. Were you guys aware of that class, of that 1988 signing class, and how much credit that they give to all of the pioneers for what you did in the 15 to almost 20 years before they got to school? Were you all aware of those men? Have you met any of them?
No, you got to remember Wamon Buggs. Derek Payne is my little brother. He graduated from Hamilton High School, sir.
I absolutely know that.
The mouth of the South. That's why we fight in Memphis all the time. Carlos Thomas, you know how he was. So he's from Memphis, Craigmont High School. So yes, they're like my little brothers. That's the connection.
Awesome. And Dr. Derek Gregg is currently, he was at Vanderbilt on the administrative staff of the athletic department. He's now the athletics director at Northwestern. So I don't know if you guys.
I didn't know anything about that. You just mentioned that. I had no idea about any of that.
No, neither did
When I left in 1974, that was it for me. I mean, I had, as I say, put my head down into the wind and just closed my eyes and went through it. And when I left, and I tell you this, Walter's the only one, and Taylor, you can speak to this as well. Walter's the only one that got me back. He kept saying that you need to come back, you need to come back, you need to come back. And I said, I don't want nothing to do with Vanderbilt, period. Okay. Yeah. The way I was treated, I just got through it. I got my degree and I'm done. Okay. And Walter kept saying, come back, come back, come back, come back. And so, it wasn't, and Perry was living in DC at the time. And Perry and I used to see each other from time to time.
Yeah.
I remember after I got out of medical sales, I went into teaching, and I was teaching at a private boys' school. And I got Perry to come talk at African American Day. And we set up afterwards and talked about, and Perry felt the same way as I did. And it wasn't until I think the A.D. Williams got Perry to come back that things began to change. But, it's only in recent years, okay? 2 years ago, I think that was when I finally put everything aside and decided that, wait a minute, this animosity and this anxiety and hate or whatever you want to call it, has got to stop. Vanderbilt did a lot for you. And I'll tell you this, that 7 years in the National Football League did nothing. But the minute I said that I was a graduate of Vanderbilt University, everybody's eyes opened up. And even when I play golf today, that people will say, football, this, okay. Where'd you go to school? Vanderbilt. And their eyes light up. Oh, you must have been pretty smart. Well, kind of. At least they thought I was. So, I mean, it's Vanderbilt did a lot for me. But it's only in recent years that I've understood exactly what it did for me.
Yeah.
And, and Marcia was talking about when Roz told him, don't come. That wasn't probably the right thing to say, because I think if he had to say it now, he said, yeah. That will do more for you. But you have to understand this. What you're going to endure to get it will be best for you in the long run.
Right.
Because what Vanderbilt taught me and what Vanderbilt did for me was able to sustain me through everything I went through, to a business world, to everything else. I was able to get through it because I had gone through those 4 years at Vanderbilt.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Thank you, Doug. Taylor, Walter,
know
Marshall,
what?
have any of you men met any of the fellas they call themselves collectively the fellas from that 1988 class? Have y'all met any of those men?
not to my knowledge.
Not
I
that I-
haven't.
Not,
No, I
not,
don't know any of them. No.
I know Wayman.
I have. They were.
Well, I mean, other than Wayman.
Yeah,
but I
wait,
met
wait.
Wayman.
They're a talented group of guys. They can sing. Dr. Payne, like I say, played 7 years. He called me big brother, and he has a successful dental practice. We had the same contact alumni, Dr. Oh boy, the dentist that used to do our teeth back in the day. What was his name, Walter? He's passed away now. But he supported Derek to go to dental school. I have met Greg. Of course, I know Carlos Thomas. He's in the Louisiana area. Still very outspoken. You talking about negative, Doug? He'll probably never come back. But like I say, he's done very well, successfully as far as his business and his family. But I had the opportunity to know some of those guys on that 88 class.
Well, I hope that there is an occasion where those men can meet you guys to be able to just make a connection.
Yeah.
Well, I just got to say this,
February.
Doug.
I'd really like to meet them.
Oh, they're
Absolutely.
super guys, but I just think, Doug and the guys for what you guys have shared with me tonight. And this is what Rod has been fighting for. And when Candace saw some of the things that we've done together, boy, this is a special group, man. I'm looking at the names of this pioneer group, man, and all of our stories. I'm like, wow, David Cully, David used to piss me off when I was at Vandy, and he wouldn't get mad at anything. And I'm like, what kind of brother is this, man?
Probably
Coach,
was smooth. I never saw him mad.
No, I'm talking about he wasn't getting paid. He's doing that student teaching, coaching, whatever, and producing.
Always smiling.
Always
Yeah.
smiling. I'm like,
Part of that's the quarterback in him trying to keep an even.
Yeah.
I don't know, man, but I just know this group from Doug all the way through meeting Taylor. Taylor's pastor at my church. This is special, man. And Vanderbilt has missed the mark on not really realizing, and it's a shame, that you guys brought in some very, very special people. We weren't treated that way always, but here we are, later years, understanding, not mad at anybody. That takes a special kind of person and a man. So I tip my hat to you guys, and hopefully we'll get a big crowd in February where we can really celebrate what we've accomplished. And that's how I feel about it, man. But we need a book, a movie. Hell, we need to be millionaires too, because we deserve it.
I wonder who's gonna play me in the movie though. I gotta be feel who that is.
Hey, partner.
That's a good
You know,
that's a good
Walter and I,
question, Doug.
Walter, remember we Sloan called us at about 8 o'clock at night to go up to to David's hometown. Where do you live in?
It's
Sparta.
Sparta. Yeah.
And to get there, and we got up there around 10, 11 o'clock at night. He wasn't home.
No.
His mother told us he was at his girlfriend's house.
Yeah.
So in the middle of the night, so we get up at 5 or 6 in the morning, go knock on the door, and stop David from signing with Tennessee.
Yeah. Right.
So I always tease David about, we got you at Vanderbilt. Yeah, I remember.
Wow.
Never heard that story. Wow.
Oh yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I tell you,
I'll
tell you what
down
really
because-
happened in February. I can't tell this on the air. Okay. But David might get mad. But anyway, we got there at 6 or 7 in the morning and knocked on the door. David comes out and says, "What are y'all doing here?" I said, "Well, we understand you're signing with Tennessee at 10 o'clock. We can't let that happen." And so I guess statute of limitations is gone by now, but we hijacked that.
Hold on. Yeah, it's gone. It's gone.
Yeah, good. We stopped that. So he ended up at Vanderbilt because of Walter and I.
Wow.
Gentlemen,
Wow.
I could sit here and talk with y'all for the next 3 hours, but I want to be respectful of your time. We're around a little over an hour. I want to give each of you, if you want, a few minutes to close out this round. This is, as I said, I'm going to do a series of Pioneer Roundtable discussions. This is the first one. But Marshall, if it's okay, if I can start with you again. If there's anything else, and if there's not, that's fine. We can pick it up another time. But I didn't know if there were anything else that you wanted to share, any poignant stories or lessons that, Doug, you put it so eloquently about the struggles and why now, as an older man, you come to appreciate why you did what you did and how Vanderbilt has done for you. Marshall, is there anything that you'd like to share? And if there's not, that's okay too.
Yeah, absolutely. The sleeper school for me was George Peabody College because I didn't know I was a teacher until I got there. Okay. So when I got to Vanderbilt, they said, "Oh, your school's across the street." I'm like, okay. I didn't know that. Hey, I'm there to play football. Okay, I got to go across the street to the school over there. But thank God they sent me to the #1 teacher school in the world at the time, George Peabody. That's why Vanderbilt sucked it up. But long story short, some of the stuff that I learned from that place is probably the reason why I'm working 2 nonprofits right now trying to save the world, because they showed me the importance of working with kids, whether they're special needs, whether they're inner city kids, whether they're rural kids. Kids are kids, give them an opportunity to flourish and amazing things can happen.
Can happen. Yeah.
I learned a lot of that stuff there at Peabody. So I'm, Golf Not Guns, that's one of my new nonprofits that I started.
All right. Yeah, I like that one.
To help kids hopefully kind of put the weapons down and pick up some sticks.
Yes.
And then sit around with some of us veterans and maybe chop it up and learn something, because it takes a while to learn how to play golf. So you got to spend a little time with somebody.
Have you got
And
any
the other-
money in the budget to bring Coach Nettles to Chicago for some coaching sessions with those kids?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna tell you a little secret. When we started the program, I was up there last week in Chicago visiting my daughter. She's the golf coach at Bloom High School.
Oh, wow.
She restarted the golf program up there, which had been dormant for like 13 years. She had a Hispanic kid that walked off the soccer team ice cold and missed qualifying for the state tournament by a 1/4 inch because the ball circled the hole and lipped out, and it was a 1/4 inch away from it. He would have sank it. He would have been in the state tournament.
Wow.
Golf Not Guns Chicago will be up and running soon. Golf Not Guns Columbus is already up and running. And ColumbusSaints.org, we just celebrated our 20th year. of
Look at
providing
that.
music education for kids and taking them all around the country, letting them compete in Drum Corps International and Drum Corps Associates. So I've been blessed to be able to be around people. Here's a funny story. I'm gonna shut up because I could talk forever. I was on the field. Don't remember. I think it was Georgia or somewhere. They had the band right behind us. Okay, so we on the field right before the game, and all 350 of them stood up, and I literally had to turn around and say, "What in the f is that?" And it was the loudest sound I've ever heard in my life, and that kind of exposed me to marching bands. But then when I went to Tennessee State,
Hey,
ooh boy.
Oh,
So yeah, that's been my mission, to provide music education for kids, because I'm tired of seeing folks with a microphone doing that da-da-da-da and da-da-da-da and
Yeah, right,
da-da-da-da.
right.
let me both.
Where the bands at? Where the musicians, the keyboard, the guitar, the drum,
Right.
you
The
know.
artist.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's start training some musicians so we can get back to some peace. But anyway, that was my Vandy experience.
Well, thank you, Marshall. Walter or Taylor, would either of you gentlemen have
yes.
something?
Yeah. Perry Waters was my idol at Pearl High School, and so he's the one that really showed me the way and committed me to go to Vanderbilt. I didn't realize that, when I went through with the problems that I had with football and sports. But once I graduated, Perry had come to me and said, "Listen, you may not have a chance to play pro football. I had a chance to go up to Green Bay, but I got cut. So I came back, and Perry said, "Listen, just think about going to law school, Nashville School of Law." So I got my degree, have been a lawyer, and I've been managed to move here and here and here in Nashville. So it was my foresight and Perry's that I could really take care of business here in our own hometown, and so it come to fruition that that I've been able to have my name out there, and just trying to stay clean and healthy and family. So, but I've been blessed. I really been blessed. I've been blessed with some outstanding individuals that have talked to me and that have led me down, the good waters, not the bad water, the good waters. So,
There's no place you can go in Nashville that they don't know him.
yeah,
Right.
Okay? I mean, there is nobody. I mean, when I was there last month, we were walking out of the stadium, and it took us 30 minutes to get out of the stadium. 50 people must have stopped us. Walter, 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 Walter. And I started to say, "Why don't you just put your head down so we can get out of here?"
yeah.
I don't know if anybody's ever referred to you, Walter, as the unsung or the unknown mayor of either Nashville or Vanderbilt. But if that many people are still stopping your Q rating must be way up there.
Vanderbilt, I'm talking about Nashville, period.
Yeah. No, he's well known in the city, no doubt about it, and rightfully so. Yeah, rightfully so. Speaking about influences in terms of shifts in your life, I know when I returned to school back in 2007 to finish my degree work, Walter was very instrumental in getting me to come back. Vanderbilt was a far distant place in my mind for over 30 years.
Yep.
I had nothing. In fact, I tell the story in the documentary film that I did, that I would come to Nashville. I'd drive or fly to Nashville, and I would not come over on West End, period. Yeah, I wouldn't even come near the university. It was just that dark of a spot in my, in my spirit. But then things changed. My life began to take some significant turns. I met a young woman that made me realize that I had some unfinished business. And if there's one thing in this life that you learn, is that you don't want to have regrets. You don't want to leave here with regrets. You don't want the if I coulda, shoulda, woulda, and Vanderbilt was in that position with me. And she told me, she said, Taylor, you have to, unless you finish Vanderbilt, you're never going to have any peace in your life at all. I don't care how much money you make. I don't care how many accolades you have, how much Vanderbilt's always going to be that spot. And when I realized that, I listened to what she said. I called Walter and asked him if he thought it could happen. He made some phone calls, and thank God for a wonderful man named David Williams, who made it happen for me, along with some other, Bill Ligon was involved with it as well. Long story short, I came back to Vanderbilt after a 40-year absence and graduated. It's something I could have done when I was there the first time around. But the person that came back was not the person that left. And so one thing I found out that Vanderbilt has taught me is that, and I'm just going to have to say this, in the Bible, it says all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord. So I realized that Vanderbilt had a place in my life. And for me to be who I am now today, I had to go through Vanderbilt. I had to have that experience for me to be completely who I am today. And so Vanderbilt taught me that I have perseverance, that I understand my purpose, and that I am a survivor, and that I have a place that I can claim. And Vanderbilt is one of those places that I can claim in my life. And so when you can find peace and happiness in a place that was dark and dingy before, that's called transformation. That's called change. And I've been allowed to come back to a place that gave me such heartache. And yet now I'm able to walk, with my head held high and taking my place, my rightful place inside of that institution, connected with the football team, all of those things, as being part of the Vanderbilt community and Vanderbilt family. So, at this point, I'm just thankful that I'm still here to experience some of this. And the truth of the matter is, if I had to do it all over again, I'd do it.
Yep.
I'd do it again.
Yeah, I would do it
Yep.
again. Yes. And knowing all that I know now, because the end reward is greater than the sum of the parts. Mm-hmm. And what am I saying? And I don't want to sound melodramatic, but there's a big thing in life. You've got to know your purpose. And without Vanderbilt, I never would have challenged myself to find my true purpose in life. So I'm good with it.
Yeah, I agree.
Gentlemen, the university has been enriched by your participation as a student, as athletes, and later in life, coming back full circle, coming back into the fold, so to speak, and participating in conversations like this, coming to Pioneers weekends each year, staying in touch with the current administration, with Candace, with Coach Lee, etc. From the bottom of my heart, I cannot thank Marshall, Doug, Walter, Taylor, Wamon. I cannot thank you five gentlemen enough for spending some time with me this evening, just sharing your stories, opening your hearts, and just telling me what you really, the way you feel. So thank you, gentlemen, for all of that.
Well,
Guys, I appreciate it. I'm gonna say this before I go. Doug, all of you guys have made me a smart person. I may say some things, but I'm no fool. 20 years, when I got there, Peabody and Vanderbilt merged. So I have a degree from Vandy in sociology. Walter knows that I've worked for several judges, doing nothing, getting paid, work 4 or 5 hours, and play golf rest of the week. So don't get it twisted now. I'm not burning
wrong with
no
that?
bridges. And 20 years as a teacher. So look, I ain't no fool. I came to this school for a purpose, and Doug, you're right. People ask you, man, where'd you go to school, man? Did you graduate? And I just looked at them like, oh yeah, I guess I
Yeah, you
did.
mean, did I graduate?
No, I've
Yeah,
had
right.
people actually ask that question and ask me that, man, because
Of course they would ask.
All
they
right.
don't big, but just understand that, guys. With all what we've said, the negative things we went through, I'm no fool, and that's why I'm living here in Nashville. Don't get it twisted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, gotta make it
Marshall,
work,
you know,
man.
I gotta say this, that I was on the committee when Chancellor Hurd called us in. It was Bill and I and a couple of professors on this committee. And Chancellor Hurd wanted to see how we could accelerate, you know, African Americans coming. And one of the professors brought up, well, doesn't the band play for Vanderbilt? And they're all music students at Peabody. Why can't we do that for football? And I remember Walter and I were sitting there, it's like, well, hold on a second. That's a good idea, as long as you don't bring all of our athletes on a Peabody scholarship and you bring them in at Vanderbilt first. And if they can't get in, then we go the other way.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And unfortunately, I was on that committee that started that. Sorry.
Wow.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, but you know, it worked. It was right across
It
the
worked.
street. I mean,
You got there.
Yeah.
yeah, it worked. Come on, it worked.
It
you
worked.
know. Yeah, it worked. Yeah, it worked.
Fortunately, I've got to bring our conversation this evening to a close. But Marshall Cheatham, Doug Nettles, Taylor Stokes, Wamon Buggs, Walter Overton, 5 of the many pioneers from the 60s through the late 70s. This is round 1 of our table discussion that we're going to host over the next few months. Thank you again, gentlemen. I hope to see all of you in person sometime soon. Shake your hands, break some bread, and just keep sharing some good times. So thank you again, gentlemen. And this
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Well, thank you, Bernard.
Conversations with
Appreciate
Appreciate
it.
it, Bernard.
Take
All right,
care.
guys.
Appreciate it.
Walter,
Hey.
Taylor.
Oh, Doug,
Marshall,
we'll make sure you get your poster, man.